Today we explore two mysteries of the great Tao, weakness and non-being. These mysteries are unveiled by the 6th century BC Chinese sage Lao Tzu in his work, the Tao Te Ching. Weakness is also called softness, and non-being is also called emptiness. These are essential qualities of the great Tao. The Tao is the all-pervading principle of the universe, the first cause, the absolute. The Tao gives birth to all things and sustains all things. It is that to which all things return. Tao is usually translated as the way. Toshihiko Izutsu comments that behind the pages of the Tao Te Ching, we feel the presence of a man who has experienced the most intimate union with the Absolute, who consequently knows what the Absolute is. What did Lao Tzu learn about non-being and the weakness of the Tao? What relevance do weakness and non-being have to our own spiritual path? Weakness and non-being are both spoken of by Lao Tzu in chapter 40 of the Tao Te Ching. He says reversal or returning is the movement of the Tao. Weakness is the function of the Tao. The things of the world originate in being, and being originates in non-being. Some translators render weakness as softness, gentleness, or yielding. Lao Tzu says that the quality of true weakness overcomes strength. There is nothing softer or weaker than water, he writes, and yet there is nothing better for attacking hard and strong things. Wing Sit Chan says that for Lao Tzu, weakness is often an outward expression of real strength. Raymond Van Over explains, he who is completely identified with a course of nature flows effortlessly with it, never fighting or resisting such infinite power, but utilizing its strength for his own fulfillment. As water finds its way, gently, effortlessly, yet touching all points, so does the superior man conduct himself. In psychological terms, this implies the destruction of arrogance, egotism, and desire, the destruction of the restless spirit that seeks to conquer and serve its own ends. To accomplish effortlessly is the virtue of natural man, the man who has Tao. You can think of weakness or softness as a receptive mode where unnatural, forceful human actions give way to the natural movement of the Tao. The understanding God has given me is that softness is a spiritual attitude or a mode that allows you to receive and to hear the voice of God speaking to you. You have to be very attuned and quiet, very soft, to hear the inner voice of God when everything around you is competing for your attention and your energy. God doesn't always use thunder and lightning to get your attention. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, the prophet Elijah stood upon Mount Horeb, and behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. The still small voice is the voice of the abiding presence of God. Whether you call it the inner Christ, the inner Buddha, or the inner Tao. The still small voice comes to us with unerring direction, comfort, teaching, and if need be, a strong note of warning. Said Gandhi, "The only tyrant I accept in this world is the still small voice." Isaiah prophesied, "Though the Lord give you the bread of adversity and the water of affliction, yet shall not thy teachers be removed into a corner any more, but thine eyes shall see thy teachers, and thine ears shall hear a word behind thee saying, This is the way, walk ye in it, when ye turn to the right and when ye turn to the left." The ancient prophets listened to God speaking to them. It was one voice and a single voice. Attempting to ridicule the process of receiving the word of the Lord, an interviewer who interviewed me on television remarked to a vivid audience, "She hears voices," which of course implies that you belong in the nut house. And so, having been encouraged by the prompter to interrupt during this wild interview, I said, "I don't hear voices. I hear the voice of God." One voice, one single voice. And it is that single voice that speaks to us through the I am presence illustrated on the chart. The I am that I am, we also call the causal body. And this causal body is like unto the great Tao of Taoism. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. This one God, with one voice, speaks to all of us, can be speaking to each one of us in every moment, and yet be that one God. The miracle of God is that he has individualized his presence for us. And therefore, in that presence of the I am that I am, we commune with original being. Therefore, to listen, and to listen well, is the subject of softness, gentleness, weakness. To be in a passive mode, ready to receive the power of that word. It is so powerful that it is the still, small voice. And so as we hear the voice of God, we hear the voice of one who has become God identified, the voice of an archangel, or a saint, or a master who has gone before us. We receive direction from those who have gone before, whom John the Revelator acknowledged as the saints robed in white who were with the Lamb at the throne of God. Therefore we have friends of light in other octaves and friends of light in the earth. When we take time to listen each day, we can hear the word of Jesus Christ speaking to us, even if it is a quote from the Bible that we remember, that is recorded within us and then quickened because we need it in that moment. Or the word of the Blessed Mother, or the ascended Master Dwal Kul, or El Morya, or Kuthumi, or Gautama Buddha, Confucius, or Lao Tzu. We listen for the voice of Lao Tzu as we read his writings. His words come alive within us, and we recognize that God created us to be the receptacle or the receiver of the word that is infinite, the word that has passed through every saint and sage who has ever returned to the Tao. Take then a few moments each day to go within and listen for direction and guidance and the comfort that you need, that you do not always find in the friend or the acquaintance. Listen to that inner Christ, for your inner Christ is real. Listen for the inner Buddha. The inner Buddha we equate with the I am that I am, the seed of the great Tao in the heart of the I am presence. When I think of listening for God's voice, I think of Tibet's great yogi, Milarepa. As you know, he's characteristically portrayed with his right hand cupped to his ear. What a wondrous thought. Do you remember the symbol of RCA? With a little dog listening at the other end of the gramophone? So the listening ear surely hears the voice of God. Scholars have surmised that Milarepa is listening to the echoes of nature, or that he is a Shravaka, a disciple of the Buddha, who is a listener, or that he is able to retain the esoteric teachings transmitted orally from guru to disciple, or that he is listening to the inner voice, that he might deliver the Buddhist teachings simply and clearly for all to understand. We must be still and we must be soft to hear the word of God. The 13th century German mystical theologian Meister Eckhart said in one of his sermons, "It is in the stillness, in the silence, that the word of God is to be heard. There is no better avenue of approach to this word than through stillness, through silence." Eckhart also said, "The power of hearing is superior to the power of seeing. Hearing brings more into a man," he said, "but in seeing he gives out more, even in the very act of looking. The power to hear the eternal word is within me, but the power to see will leave me. For hearing I am passive, and seeing I am active." Eckhart explains that our blessedness depends on our passiveness to God. Our passiveness. He says the soul is more blessed by what is God's than by what is her own, and for this reason her blessing depends more on what God does than on anything she can do. Dionysius' disciples asked him how Timothy came to outstrip them all in perfection. Dionysius replied, "Timothy is a man who is passive to God. He who is skilled in this will outstrip all men." To be soft or weak means you are in this passive, receptive mode in which you can hear God. Where do you listen for the voice of God? God has given you a chamber whose acoustics allow you to hear his voice, no matter how softly he may speak. It is the secret chamber of your heart. In Hindu and Buddhist writings, the heart is described as the place where the Lord of all abides, where heaven and earth meet, and where one rediscovers and perfects the real self. The Chandogya Upanishad instructs, "In the center of the castle of Brahman, our own body, there is a small shrine in the form of a lotus flower, and within can be found a small space. We should find who dwells there, and we should want to know him. And if anyone asks, 'Who is he who dwells in a small shrine in the form of a lotus flower in the center of the castle of Brahman?' Whom should we want to find and know?" We can answer, "The little space within the heart is as great as this vast universe. The heavens and the earth are there, and the sun and the moon and the stars. Fire and lightning and winds are there, and all that now is and all that is not. For the whole universe is in him, and he dwells within our heart." The ascended master Dwal Kul, known to his students as the Tibetan master, speaks of the hidden chamber of the heart in his series of letters to his disciples. These were dictated to me, and I published them as intermediate studies of the human aura. He says, "Throughout all time, the sons and daughters of God who have come into the initiations of the masters of the Far East have been received in sacred audience in the hidden chamber of the heart by the hidden man of the heart." To Hindus and Buddhists, this hidden chamber is the secondary heart chamber, an 8-petaled lotus, which is identified just beneath the 12-petaled heart chakra. It is the place where you, the disciple, contact the master. It is the place where the laws of cosmos are written in the inward parts of man, for the law is inscribed as the eightfold path of the Buddha upon the inner walls of the chamber. Here on the throne, ensconced in the lotus flame, is the Guru, the Christ self, who receives your soul, the soul that is the initiate. This chamber is the sanctuary of meditation, the place to which the souls of light bearers withdraw. And here in this chamber, we shall pursue the master presence in order that each disciple of the Christ might come to know him as he is. The voice of your Christ self and your I am presence are quietly powerful, while the voices of the world are raucously louder. The masters of Huainan, a Taoist collection of sayings on civilization, culture, and government, composed over 2,000 years ago, says, there are countless sights, sounds, and flavors, rarities from distant lands, oddities and curiosities that can change the aim of the mind, destabilize the vital spirit, and disturb the circulation and energy. The 3rd century Neoplatonic philosopher Plotinus wrote, we must be deaf to the sounds of the senses and keep the soul's faculty of apprehension one-pointed and ready to catch visions from on high. To catch these visions, we may have to remove ourselves from people and places and circumstances that are not conducive to our ongoing communion with God. And there are times when we simply have to be alone. John Barrymore once quipped, God said, it is not good for man to be alone, but sometimes it's a great relief. Are the places we go and the things we do and the kind of TV we watch and the books we read really helping us to contact God and discover our real self? It's time that we looked at the sands in the hourglass and take stock. Lao Tzu teaches the necessity of inner and outer stillness. Ingrid Fisher writes, all Taoists strive to become one with the Tao. The Tao is realized in abiding in silence. In the Tao Te Ching, silence corresponds to the return to the source. By abiding in stillness, all inner and outer activity comes to rest, and all limitations and conditions fade away. This is when the celestial light shines forth. This is when the celestial light shines forth, allowing us to behold our true selves and realize the absolute. Lao Tzu writes of this process in chapter 56 of the Tao Te Ching. Block the passages, shut the doors, let all sharpness be blunted, all tangles be untied, all glare be tempered, all dust be smooth. This is called the mysterious leveling. The mysterious leveling. Dust is the Taoist symbol for the noise and the fuss of everyday life. Paraphrasing Jesus, Lao Tzu, had he lived before him, might have said, whosoever shall not receive you in the spirit of the Tao, nor hear your words in the spirit of the Tao, shake off the dust of your feet. When Lao Tzu says, let all dust be smoothed, he is saying, let the noise and fuss of everyday life be stilled, and thereby achieve harmony with the Tao. For dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return. if thou dost not still the dust. Therefore, let us not do nothing, let us do something, else we may wind up with those who cast dust on their heads and weep and wail over the great city, crying, Alas, alas, in 1 hour Babylon is made desolate. And did not the prophet Daniel say, Many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine in the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. The teachings of the Taoist sage, Zhuang-Tzu, speak of mental fasting as a method for attaining oneness with the Tao. Zhuang-Tzu creates a conversation in which Confucius advises a disciple to undertake the fasting of the mind. Confucius says, The goal of fasting is inner unity. This means hearing, but not with the ear, hearing but not with the understanding, hearing with the spirit, with your whole being. The hearing that is only in the ears is one thing. The hearing of the understanding is another, but the hearing of the spirit is not limited to any one faculty, to the ear or to the mind. Hence it demands the emptiness of all the faculties. And when the faculties are empty, then the whole being listens. There is then a direct grasp of what is right there before you that can never be heard with the ear or understood with the mind. There is the direct grasp, going beyond all senses and faculties. There is yet the direct grasp. Fasting of the mind empties the faculties, frees you from limitation and from preoccupation. Fasting of the mind begets unity and freedom. To me, hearing with the spirit, with your whole being, as Zhuang-Tzu says, is that soft, receptive mode, which is an aspect of weakness. The stillness and softness of the Taoist is much like the state of contemplation upon the divine, practiced by the great saints of East and West. In Catholicism, one of the steps of contemplation is called recollection. Recollection. The Catholic Encyclopedia says, recollection, as understood in respect to the spiritual life, means attention to the presence of God in the soul. It includes the withdrawal of the mind from external and earthly affairs in order to attend to the things of God, the divine things. It is the same as interior solitude in which the soul is alone with God. This recollection is twofold. It may be acquired by our own efforts, aided by the ordinary grace of God. Thus, any devout soul can acquire the habit of thinking of God's presence and of fixing attention upon Him and His divine perfections. This is called active recollection. Active recollection. The other, called passive, does not depend upon our own efforts, but is an extraordinary grace infused by God, by which He summons together the faculties of the soul and manifests His presence and His perfections. In her work, The Way of Perfection, the 16th century saint Teresa of Avila explains the nature of the prayer of recollection. Now consider what your master says, who art in heaven. Do you think it is of a little importance to know what heaven is and where you must seek your most sacred Father? Well, I tell you that for wandering minds it is very important not only to believe these truths, but to strive to understand them by experience. Doing this is one of the ways of greatly slowing down the mind and recollecting the soul. In sum, wherever God is, there is heaven. Without a doubt you can believe that where his majesty is present, all glory is present. Consider what St. Augustine says, that he sought him in many places, but found him ultimately within himself. Do you think it matters little for a soul with a wandering mind to understand this truth and see that there is no need to go to heaven in order to speak with one's eternal Father or find delight in him? Nor is there any need to shout. However softly we speak, he is near enough to hear us. Neither is there any need for wings to go find him. All one need do is go into solitude and look at him within oneself, and not turn away from so good a guest, but with great humility speak to him as a father. Beseech him as you would a father. Tell him about your trials. Ask him for a remedy against them. Leave aside any of that faint-heartedness that some persons have and think is humility. You see, humility doesn't consist in refusing a favor the king offers you, but in accepting such a favor and understanding how bountifully it comes to you and being delighted with it. It is not true humility to say, I have the Emperor of heaven and earth in my house, for he comes to it in order to favor me and be happy with me, and out of humility I do not want to answer him or stay with him or take what he gives me, but I leave him alone. Or while he is telling me and begging me to ask him for something, I do not do so, but remain poor, and I even let him go, for he sees that I never finish trying to make up my mind. Have nothing to do with this kind of humility, daughters, but speak with him as with a father, or a brother, or a lord, or with a spouse. Sometimes in one way, at other times in another. He will teach you what you must do in order to please him. Consider that it is well worthwhile for you to have understood this truth, that the Lord is within us, and that there we must be with him. The intellect is recollected much more quickly with this kind of prayer, even though it may be vocal. It is a prayer that brings with it many blessings. This prayer is called recollection, because the soul collects her faculties together and enters within herself to be with her God. And her divine master comes more quickly to teach her and give her the prayer of quiet than he would through any other method she might use. Those who by such a method can enclose themselves within this little haven of the soul, where the Maker of heaven and earth is present, and grow accustomed to refusing to be where the exterior senses in their distraction have gone, or to look in that direction, should believe they are following an excellent path. Saint Teresa also suggests a visualization to aid in recollection. She says, let us imagine that within us is an extremely rich palace, built entirely of gold and precious stones. In sum, built for a lord such as this. Imagine, too, as is indeed so, that you have a part to play in order for the palace to be so beautiful. For there is no edifice as beautiful as is a soul, pure and full of virtues. The greater the virtues, the more resplendent the jewels. Imagine also that in this palace dwells this mighty king who has been gracious enough to become your father, and who is seated upon an extremely valuable throne, which is your heart. This may seem trifling, but all of this imagining is necessary that we may truly understand that within us lies something incomparably more precious than what we see outside ourselves. Something incomparably more precious than what we see outside ourselves. I consider it impossible for us to pay so much attention to worldly things if we take the care to remember we have a guest such as this within us. For we then see how lowly these things are next to what we possess within ourselves. You will laugh at me, perhaps, and say that what I am explaining is very clear, and you will be right. For me, though, it was obscure for some time. I understood well that I had a soul, but what this soul deserved and who dwelt within her, I did not understand, because I had covered my eyes with the vanities of the world. For in my opinion, if I had understood as I do now, that in this little palace of my soul dwelt so great a king, I would not have left him alone so often. Saint Teresa adds, but what a marvelous thing that he who would fill 1,000 worlds and many more with his grandeur would enclose himself in something so small. In fact, since he is Lord, he is free to do what he wants, and since he loves us, he adapts himself to our size. Teresa of Avila, greatly beloved by all of us, rediscovered Lao Tzu's discovery of the 6th century BC. Remember this discovery. All Taoists strive to become one with the Tao. The Tao is realized by abiding in silence. In the Tao Te Ching, silence corresponds to the return to the source. Remember, too, by abiding in stillness, all inner and outer activity comes to rest, and all limitations and conditions fade away. This is when the celestial light shines forth, allowing us to behold our true selves and realize the absolute. Remember, block the passages, shut the doors, let all sharpness be blunted, all tangles be untied, all glare be tempered, all dust be smoothed. This is called the mysterious leveling. The mysterious leveling. Jesus taught us the formula whereby in deepest love we might attain this mysterious leveling. Listen carefully. The Lord said, love your enemies, and do good and lend, hoping for nothing again, and your reward shall be great, and ye shall be children of the highest. For he is kind unto the unthankful and to the evil. Be therefore merciful, as your Father also is merciful. Judge not, and ye shall not be judged. Condemn not, and ye shall not be condemned. Forgive, and ye shall be forgiven. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, and shaken together and running over, shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that ye meet withal, it shall be measured to you again. This is the mysterious leveling. To facilitate our communion with God, the Ascended Master Dwal Kul has given us an exercise similar to the one I just read to you from Teresa of Avila. This is what he says. To enter into the garden of the heart is to enter a chamber that exists in the mind of God, which can come into being as the kingdom of God within you, through meditation and through visualization. The Psalms were written as praises to the Lord, whom David knew as he entered this chamber. And so I bid you enter also. This chamber is the place where the planes of matter are consecrated by the fires of the heart to the very point of perfection. Thus the Eastern devotee sees the earth transformed into jewel-like crystals. Emeralds, diamonds, rubies compose the island in the midst of the nectar sea. And the essence of the Spirit most holy is the fragrance from flowering trees. Use your imagination to create this royal scene, a scene that is befitting your Holy Christ self and your Ascended Master Guru. In order that you might attain the Christ consciousness of the 7 rays, I give to you the exercise of visualizing each of the masters of the rays. And thus we will proceed step by step to expand the aura according to the masterful consciousness of these gurus. In all precipitation, it is well to be specific. Therefore, draw a specific outline in your mind of this bejeweled island suspended in a glistening sea. Then see yourself walking from the shores of the sea through the tropical trees and vegetation to the center and highest promontory of the island. Tropical birds and flowers of delicate and brilliant colors make the scene more vivid. And by you hear the songs of the birds as they sing the song celestial, and key the soul to the frequencies of that plane, where the ascending triangle of matter meets the descending triangle of spirit. When you come to the center of your island in the sun, visualize specifically the platform and the throne that are consecrated for the image and the sacred presence of the Master. Select a design that is richly carved, gold-leafed, and inlaid with precious and semi-precious stones, and visualize upon it a velvet cushion. Dwalkul then instructs us to ask God to walk and talk with us in this paradise garden, even as we walked and talked with the Lord God in Eden. We should invite the ascended masters, each in their turn, to sit upon the throne and teach us. Like Lao Tzu, Dwalkul would have us go within to commune with God. During that special time each day, he would have us empty ourselves of the concerns and worries of the day. Go within and be at peace. As Lao Tzu says in chapter 16 of the Tao Te Ching, reach the pole of emptiness, abide in genuine quietude. To return to the root is to attain quietude. It is called to recover life. To recover life is to attain the everlasting. To know the everlasting is to be illumined. Now I'm going to tell you the story of Beatrice of Nazareth, a 13th century Cistercian nun, and her very real experience with her Lord Jesus Christ. It conveys the essence of softness, that receptivity that welcomes God and embraces him fully, not partially, but fully. This experience was truly the turning point in Beatrice's spiritual development. Brunn and Apini Burgard write, already at a previous stage, Beatrice had become aware she was counting too much on her own strength, and that she must let God act within her. Little by little, meditating on Christ's passion and the mystery of the Trinity, she reaches another dimension. First of all, during Mass, after the elevation, which is the raising of the host and the wine chalice, she sees Christ on the altar with his arms outstretched. She is literally united to him, heart to heart, and all Christ's spirit pervades her. By means of a love pact, she agrees to do everything the Lord asks of her. By means of a love pact, she agrees to do everything that the Lord asks of her, and he impresses his image upon her as upon soft wax, to make her similar to himself. In the light of contemplation, she is stripped of her own will, so that all her acts participate in the service of God. There is no longer any distinction between active and contemplative life. The goal of the mystic is to receive the imprint of the divine image upon her soul. It is to bear upon the mirror of her soul the reflection of the Holy Christ self. Lao Tzu writes in chapter 10 of the Tao Te Ching, in nourishing the soul and embracing the one? Can you do it without letting them leave? Can you concentrate your vital force and achieve the highest degree of weakness like an infant? In cultivating and cleaning your profound mirror, can you do it so that it has no blemish? In opening and closing the gates of heaven, can you play the part of the female? Playing the part of the female is playing the part of weakness. It is being in the spiritually receptive mode to receive the divine imprint and the divine reflection. The sweetness of Beatrice is like a rare flower. As you listen to the recounting of her story, you can almost smell the fragrance of the rose of her heart, even the rose of Sharon, which is another name for Jesus. Many of you know that the practice of the presence of God was the point of self-mastery of Brother Lawrence, a 17th century lay Carmelite. The story of his devotion is told by Abbé Joseph de Beaufort in the book, The Practice of the Presence of God. He writes, "The first time I saw Brother Lawrence was upon the 3rd of August, 1666. He told me that he had been the footman to Monsieur Fubert, the treasurer, and that he himself was a great awkward fellow who broke everything. Brother Lawrence said that he had desired to be received into a monastery, thinking that he would there be made to smart for his awkwardness and the faults he should commit, and so he should sacrifice to God his life with its pleasures. But God had disappointed him, he having met with nothing but satisfaction in that state. He told me that we should establish ourselves in a sense of God's presence by continually conversing with him, that it was a shameful thing to quit his conversation in order to think of trifles and fooleries. With him the set times of prayer were not different from other times. He retired to pray according to the directions of his superior, but he did not want such retirement nor ask for it, because his greatest business did not divert him from God. He said that useless thoughts spoil all, that the mischief began there, but that we ought to reject them as soon as we perceive their impertinence to the matter in hand, or our salvation, and return to communion with God. Brother Lawrence also said that it was a great delusion to think that the times of prayer ought to differ from other times. As Brother Lawrence had found such advantage in walking in the presence of God, it was natural for him to recommend it earnestly to others. But his example was a stronger inducement than any arguments he could propose. His very countenance was edifying, such a sweet and calm devotion appearing in it as could not but affect the beholders. And it was observed that in the greatest hurry of business in the kitchen, he still preserved his recollection and heavenly mindedness. He was never hasty nor loitering, but did each thing in its season with an even, uninterrupted composure and tranquility of spirit. The time of business, said he, does not with me differ from the time of prayer. And in the noise and clatter of my kitchen, while several persons are at the same time calling for different things, I possess God in as great tranquility as if I were upon my knees at the Blessed Sacrament. Thus he shows us that in the midst of the most young work, in the act of balancing our karma or serving our fellow man, in fulfilling our life's calling, it is possible to be in that spiritually receptive, passive yin mode that continually communes with God. In a letter Brother Lawrence wrote, he revealed, "I make it my business only to persevere in his holy presence, wherein I keep myself by a simple attention, and a general fond regard to God, which I may call an actual presence of God. Or to speak better, an habitual silent and secret conversation of the soul with God, which often causes me joys and raptures inwardly, and sometimes also outwardly, so great that I am forced to use means to moderate them and prevent their appearance to others. Surely this was a devotee who was one with the great Tao. He had unlocked the true mystery of weakness and found therein his greatest strength. By being in a state of continual weakness or softness, communing with God day and night, Brother Lawrence was able to tap the unfailing source of strength and joy and the powerful peace of the Tao. He could truly answer yes to the question Lao Tzu asks in the Tao Te Ching. Can you keep the unquiet physical soul from straying? Hold fast to the unity and never quit. Remember, all Taoists strive to become one with the Tao. The Tao is realized in abiding in silence. In the Tao Te Ching, silence corresponds to the return to the source. Remember, by abiding in stillness, all inner and outer activity comes to rest, and all limitations and conditions fade away. This is when the celestial light shines forth, allowing us to behold our true selves and realize the Absolute. Let us take up lines 3 and 4 of chapter 40 of the Tao Te Ching on the mystery of non-being. They read, "The things of the world originate in being, and being originates in non-being. The things of the world originate in being, and being originates in non-being." The term non-being might sound somewhat foreboding and untouchable. After all, how can anything that exists be non-being? Quite simply, to Lao Tzu, non-being is that which is nameless, imperceptible, indescribable. It is so absolutely transcendent that he cannot find words to describe it. So he calls it non-being. The word that comes to my mind as I contemplate the mystery of the ineffable is unbeing, meaning that the ineffable cannot be circumscribed. The 3rd century philosopher Wang Pi taught that non-being is the ultimate principle that underlies and unites all things, and that non-being is the equivalent of the Tao. Non-being is the equivalent of the Tao. In his famous commentary on the Tao Te Ching, Wang Pi says, "All being originated from non-being. The time before physical forms and names appeared was the beginning of the myriad things. After forms and names appear, Tao develops them, nourishes them, and places them in peace and order, that is, becomes their mother. This means that Tao produces and completes things with the formless and nameless. Thus they are produced and completed, but do not know why. Indeed, it is the mystery of mysteries. To realize true being," he says, "it is necessary to return to non-being." As Lao Tzu writes at the beginning of chapter 40, returning is the movement of the Tao. Returning is the movement of the Tao. Can you visualize the great sphere of light that is the Tao perpetually turning? And suppose it were a wheel, and on this wheel were a thread, and as it turned, it enfolded the thread into itself, and that we are on the end of this thread. Returning is the movement of the Tao. We couldn't return unless the Tao moved. That is our return, winding us back to the source. For me, unbeing, or non-being, is being before being. It is withdrawing the sling of the slingshot. It is the concentration of negative power for the release of the projectile into being. Unbeing is negative power. Being is positive power. Wang Pi also says, the 10,000 things, which is the Chinese term meaning all of creation, have 10,000 different forms, but in the final analysis, they are one. How do they become one? Because of non-being. Thus all that lives and moves and has its being is in its essence one with its source, the great ineffable Tao, which we have just learned is non-being. Anna Seidel further explains that non-being does not mean nothingness, but rather the absence of perceptible qualities. In this sense, I would compare non-being to the Buddhist term suchness, or undifferentiated suchness. Suchness is a Buddhist term used to describe absolute reality. It is the true nature or essence of all things, but it is beyond all concepts, distinctions, or descriptions. Suchness is not only the absolute, but it is also the Buddha nature, innate within all beings. We see the Buddha nature as the seed of the I am that I am, being in all things. We see it as the divine nature within man, the seed of enlightenment, and his potential for Buddhahood. It has been said that Tao is ultimate reality, and as that ultimate reality, it is the same as the Buddha nature. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu describes the Tao as mysterious and unfathomable. Everything arises from it, and yet it is unnameable. Lao Tzu writes, I do not yet know its name. I style it the way. As I said earlier, Tao is usually translated as the way. Were I forced to give it a name, says Lao Tzu, I would call it the Great. I would call it the Great. The great tone makes little sound. The great image has no shape. The Tao is great, but has no name. Tao is hidden and nameless, yet it is Tao alone that skillfully provides for all and brings them to perfection. We look at it and do not see it. Its name is the invisible. We listen to it and do not hear it. Its name is the inaudible. We touch it and do not find it. Its name is the subtle or formless. Let us think for a moment of the physical universe or universes. There is no end and no beginning to the stars and systems of worlds and galaxies. The bigness is too big for us to take in, to comprehend. To me, this phenomenon represents non-being or unbeing. Because I cannot contain it, therefore I cannot define it, therefore I cannot name it. Therefore, to me, it is non-being or unbeing, something that I know exists, but something that I cannot enter. Yet it is all around me. This unbeing, non-being, for me, is becoming being. That is, it is coming into my awareness, and when and if in some plane of being, I can contain it, then for me it shall no longer be unbeing or non-being. It shall be being.